it's like there's just always there's always that next follow-up question. Someone just doesn't want to leave it because they are really curious, because for some people the weight loss is dramatic, or they haven't seen you in a year. Almost like just acknowledge the change and then leave it alone. I think that, and however someone addresses it, because someone saying you look good might be uncomfortable for someone. Hey, you look like you've lost a lot of weight. Even if it is congratulations, there's always the follow-up question I feel like is more offensive than the actual comment.
I'm really excited to share with you my conversation with TJ and Summer. And in this conversation, we talk about how to speak to other people when you've noticed that they might have lost weight, and how you interact with them is really going to be a function of how open they are, how close you are to that person, and how you actually speak to that person. But before we get into this video, what would be really helpful for this channel is if you would just hit that like and then subscribe button. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin a comment with a form, and if you subscribe to this channel, what I will do is I will send you a PDF document of my book, Health Habits for Diabetes. So I'll just send that over to you in an email as soon as I see that you've gone ahead and subscribed to the channel. Thanks again. All right, so today I'm going to be chatting with Summer, who is one of our dietitians at Sequence, and then TJ, who's a member at Sequence. You've probably seen Summer a lot, and I actually interviewed TJ, what was that, about a month ago? And you brought up something that I thought was really valuable to have this continued conversation around, because what I actually did was I said congratulations to you for you've lost over 100 pounds. And what I wanted to get was both of your intakes on this, because maybe that's not the best way to be talking to people that have lost weight. And then because both of you have had your own experiences, maybe you could start out sharing your experience, and then let's have a conversation about what that's like on the other side of the compliment.
Yeah, even for me, so today, around 160 pounds lost since last August 1st. Actually lost about 10 pounds before I started, so the 150 since I joined Sequence. And one of the interesting conversations I'm constantly having is that congratulations or that way to go thing makes it feel like there's also the other side of it, which is either the failure piece or the fact that you were doing something wrong before that got you in that situation. And I think it's really kind of a double-edged compliment sometimes. And I don't think it's that people are being malicious or even anything terrible, but it's just like there's not so much people who are still heavy or haven't started a weight loss journey or not worried about it, that they're also not figuring it out, or I've unlocked some secrets and now I'm either more credible or I'm smarter now, or people are like, oh, you must have it together more. And I think the reverse side of it is that all of this is like a season or a phase, and that weight comes back or something else happens. It doesn't make me, I wasn't a bad person when I was still heavy. I just think it's an interesting conversation to have, because I don't think it's meant to be taken that way from people who make those compliments, but I also think it creates almost like a new dialogue in your head. Like, is that the only reason for that to continue, is if I gain this weight back, or this thing is temporary, or I'm trying to create these habits, but it almost creates like a greater level of pressure around the success for it.
Yeah, and I want to hear from Summer. I think we just lost you for a second, but TJ, what I'm kind of hearing too, part of this is sometimes when people congratulate people who have lost weight, so maybe you hear that, is they also place some type of value on some behavioral traits that you have that are probably actually something that you've always had, and it's like, so was I not this before? Does that make sense, and does that sound right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so, and I think that's the interesting piece about it is there's not a missing piece to it that I found somewhere, or found this thing. It's like those traits. Well, fitness doesn't make you a good person. It also doesn't make you a bad person if it's not part of your routine. Just like diet or finding balance or not thinking about food as much. So um, I think that's just an interesting piece to it.
Yeah. Summer, would you be able to share a little bit of your experience with this?
Yeah, I relate to that so much, TJ. I have lost 145 pounds in my life. I lost 100 pounds a while ago and then like really still struggled until I joined Sequence as a member, and I'm also a dietitian here. And I always really struggled with this concept of I was looked at as a more credible dietitian when I was leaner than when I was heavier. So from physicians and
Yeah.
nurses that I worked with in the hospital setting, and it was just I would receive a different level of respect for my recommendations now when I work at the hospital now on like weekends, and I'm treated differently than I was when I was working in the same hospital doing the same job with the same knowledge base and the same credibility that I was still a good dietitian when I was heavier. And so that was really always really tough for me because I would notice the being treated differently. And as a woman, I noticed being treated differently by men and different scenarios when you're just out and about. And it's this concept of just the fat phobia that we live in our society that assigns value to people based on their body size. And it's ingrained in our culture and in our society to a detriment, I think, because it really makes us feel some type of way about ourselves when we're bigger. And then it also adds a layer of like shame and guilt when we do want to lose weight and take control of our health and fitness habits. It can play a role there because we shame ourselves sometimes into wanting to lose weight. And something that I learned in my training as a dietitian is shame is not a great motivator. Shame does not get people to stick to a healthy habit or be consistent in the gym or make lasting behavior change. Those external motivators of people wanting to look a certain way or to get a date or not feel shame about being overweight, those motivators don't stick as much as maybe the internal motivators do. So this is a super important conversation, and I love that Sequence supports this, and we really are thinking about weight loss in a way that's different from traditional weight loss programs and weight management programs. Because we are mindful of the language that we use here and the way that we interact with our members and as dietitians and fitness and the care team, of being mindful of congratulating weight loss in a way that doesn't bring up these big thoughts and feelings. So one of the things that we have been doing trainings on actually with our clinicians and our care managers is acknowledging somebody's progress and hard work and success on the program in a way that highlights the actual behaviors and skills and tools. Like, you were so determined to stick to your goals of eating 3 vegetables every day. How awesome for you. So we want to congratulate the actual behaviors that are health promoting, not necessarily the number on the scale that resulted as a matter of doing those behaviors. So I know, Justin, you talk a lot about being consistent in the gym, and we talk a lot with nutrition about being consistent with your nutrition. One of my favorite things is like, I'm so proud of you for staying consistent even while you were going through a hard time. It shows how determined you are to work towards your goal. That is such a more valuable praise than, oh, good job, you still lost 2 pounds.
Yeah.
And so I think that's super important to be mindful of, and I appreciate that you shared that with Justin, because the congratulations feels weird sometimes.
Yeah, it
Can
does.
I have a couple questions. So, oh, go ahead, TJ.
No, you're fine. I just think it's really funny because it.
I don't know if we're having connection issues. Yeah.
Yeah, I know sometimes if there's a lag, but so TJ, two questions for you. And one, I love that the Sequence dietitians are doing this. You know, I learn a lot from you all as well. And so hearing how Summer, who's a dietitian, who would be someone that might be working with you, is it changing the language around weight loss? One, how does you react to that? And then also, how can we translate that over to people that are not dietitians, people that don't work in weight loss, but are people that are seeing other people lose weight? Like, how would you like to be addressed? And I know we're just, two people here, but maybe you can speak up for people that, because I imagine it's an uncomfortable conversation to be had. Like, hey, you said congratulations to me, but what I would rather you say is this. Most people aren't going to do this, so hopefully this gets out, and maybe people that know people that are losing weight can understand how to better interact with these people. So I just spewed a mouthful at you, but the first question was, hearing your dietitian say these things, how does that make you feel? And then for both of you, what's the better conversation?
I think I don't think there's like a word or a phrase because everyone's so individualized around what makes them feel comfortable and what doesn't. But it's almost just like the timing piece, like because there's always like a follow up question. Like if someone just makes the comment and then just drops it, I don't think it's as big of a deal as like, so what are you doing? Oh, that and then it's like this next question, and there's still all the stigma around being on a GLP-1 medication, where people want to probe about, oh, it must be easy now that you take that, or I know what you're doing, or sometimes when people are like, hey, you look really good, it's like that's enough to acknowledge that there's definitely a change in the appearance or the physical attributes piece of it, which I think is just enough. And it's almost like just drop it after that. You don't need the follow-up questions, or maybe even somebody who asks like, hey, is there any way I could talk to you about how you did it later? Like giving someone an out is huge. I went to a football game here at the school, and someone was like, I know what you did, and I'm like, okay, like, sure, I don't know how I'm going to address this around 14 people, but it's like there's just always there's always that next follow-up question. Someone just doesn't want to leave it because they are really curious, because for some people the weight loss is dramatic, or they haven't seen you in a year. Almost like just acknowledge the change and then leave it alone. I think that, and however someone addresses it, because someone saying you look good might be uncomfortable for someone. Hey, you look like you've lost a lot of weight. Even if it is congratulations, there's always the follow-up question. I feel like is more offensive than the actual comment.
I think it depends too on the scenario and the situation and like who it is. So like I've always been really uncomfortable with like men in the workplace. If you comment on my body, that feels sketchy. Like please don't. You look great. If it's a work friend who's a woman who I know also has struggled with her weight, and maybe we've talked about weight or diet or nutrition in the past, then I'm more comfortable having that conversation and opening the door. It kind of like, how well do I know you?
Yep.
Determines how open I'm going to be about having this conversation. And then I think that if you see someone who's lost a lot of weight and you find that inspiring, and you know that what they've been doing, maybe they've been sharing it online and they've been very open about it, I think that that's great to go say, hey, I see you working hard, you're doing great, keep it up, you've inspired me. I think those comments are super helpful and wonderful. But if a person isn't openly sharing about their healthcare, and that's what this is, it's healthcare, it's nobody's place to ask. And so I think that, we live in a world where a lot of people do, and I myself, I openly share my ups and my downs and what I'm eating and all my workouts and everything online. So I've opened the door to people asking me questions and making comments. And that comes with the territory. But if somebody's not doing that and they're not being very open about it, it's really nobody's business. Like nobody's required to share what methods they use for weight loss, or what medications, or what their workouts were. And I think as individuals, it's a skill to practice setting your own boundary of saying something like, sorry, my weight is not a topic of conversation today. And
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think it is too, because you only give attention to the things you want to grow, and it's just getting used to not giving that attention when people make those comments is kind of a growth piece, because if they're willing to do it, then I guess the comment is are they going to say it if you gain the weight back? It's kind of that weird piece when you walk away. It's like, oh, that's a really weird way to have to worry about it, but it is for weight loss when it's new. The whole
And
time
something
feels
that's interesting that
temporary.
you said is our something that we learned as was something I was trained to do. I had a wonderful professor for my counseling class that was really all about like just emotional intelligence and having good awareness of the relationship that you're building with your patient as a dietitian. That one of the things that actually you don't think about that can get you in trouble is being too much of a cheerleader. And so if I'm constantly praising you for all your greatness and yay, I'm so happy for you, you're not going to feel as comfortable coming to me when you're having a hard time.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to disappoint me.
Yep.
And so as a dietitian, it's really important to me that folks feel comfortable coming to me not only to celebrate the successes, but to work through the barriers and the challenges. So one of the things we run into as dietitians is people are, oh, I didn't want to come to my visit because I haven't done what I was supposed to do this past couple weeks and I didn't want you to feel disappointed in me. Like, no, when you're having those feelings, that's when I need you to see me the most. That's when I want you to come in. That's when we need to talk, is when you're having barriers and challenges. So when we look at somebody who's lost a ton of weight and we want to say, wow, congratulations, I think it's actually more helpful to be like, wow, you probably worked through a lot of stuff to get here.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
like
Yeah.
how much more good does that feel, like acknowledging the effort versus acknowledging the outcome?
Yeah, and I think that's why it feels more genuine. Like people who know, like the consistency piece has been more of my focus. Like, getting the runs in, getting the lifts in, trying to really increase that stuff, and having, it is the intimate piece. Like people who know you really well, it feels better anyways when they make the comments. So it is. You've also got to take it all with kind of a grain of salt. It's just an interesting conversation to have around how do you approach someone who has had a massive success in getting weight off is low key as possible. Like that, you don't need to overdo it.
Yeah. And I think too, when it comes to weight, people put weight in a category as if weight is a behavior.
Yep.
Weight is not a behavior. Weight is just a measurement. It takes a multitude of different types of behaviors to result in a certain weight on the scale. And so weight is not a personality trait. Weight is not a behavior. Weight is not a moral value. Weight is literally just a measurement of gravity, right? And so unfortunately, and I've experienced this too, when I really was struggling with my weight, I would internalize this. I would say, dang it, you're so smart in school. You're so good at your job. You're a good mom. You've done everything right. Why can't you figure out this weight thing? And I would put all of those things on the same level. Well, no, because none of those things had a biological driver. None of those things had environmental barriers. All of those things had environmental supports, right? All of those successes that I've had, I can look at the behaviors and the drivers and the barriers and the efforts that it required. And they were all very well supported by my family, like going to school and getting good grades. I had a whole team behind me to make that happen, right? And that helped me be successful at that. When it came to losing weight, my whole family was trying to order pizza every weekend as a teenager, right? I didn't have those drivers to support me. So we can't look at the outcomes and say, well, it's all an individual's fault, because it's not. There's just this whole picture around the complex disease of obesity, and the biology and the environment and the economics and the politics of it all play just as much, if not a stronger role than our hard work in the gym.
Yep.
And that's why I love these GLP-1 medications, because they help with that biology bit and the appetite bit. And then we've got the consistency in the gym, which helps with our habit changes and the nutrition counseling, and it all comes together. but I think it's important to acknowledge that people then still struggle because they still have other barriers that we need to work through to get to whatever their goal may be. And so when you see somebody losing weight and you say, yep, you worked so hard and you did all of that, that's awesome. But at the same time, too, like, if you don't know their methods and you don't know how they got there, that could be a tricky conversation because we don't want to be congratulating or acknowledging or putting in a positive light an unhealthy approach to that weight loss either.
Yeah.
Which I know I kind of took conversations here, but that's a whole nother thing that you never know why somebody lost weight. They could have had a death in the family or dealing with depression or an illness that's none of your business. And so I really think unless you know that someone has been actively trying to lose weight and they've been open about that, somebody's weight should not be a topic of conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd
It's
say
so much easier.
you've all brought up something.
Like there's so
You've
much more interesting things about me than my weight. Talk to me about something else.
You're running a half marathon. But I was gonna, from someone that's listening in on this, part of what I'm getting out of this is it's a function of your relationship with the other person. If somebody's on the periphery of your social network, they don't need to say anything. And it's also a function of how open you are to the world about what you're doing. And it is a much better circumstance if you are if you're interested in the behaviors that they're doing rather than a number. Like, what do you? I'm curious if you're okay talking about it. Would you share with me what you've been doing differently? And then maybe perhaps it's because I want to change myself, and maybe you're inspiring me. I'd love to learn your methods. Not just about the number on the scale. And I do have a follow-up question too. But as someone who's maybe even just say an outsider, is that a better way to approach that? Understand where you stand in relationship to that person. We lost TJ, and understand that's okay. And then understand where that person is open in relation to the world. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think just having an awareness of where people are and what they're doing, and don't, I hope we're moving past people being so focused on other people's bodies. Because it's weird, actually. It's kind of creepy,
It is weird.
Yeah. So
I do.
Back.
Yeah. Because I have a question, and maybe you can address this too. Because this is actually maybe even on behalf of TJ. I hope his phone didn't die. He talked a little bit before about you get a compliment, you've lost weight, and there's almost, and I think these were his exact words, is there's anxiety around what if the shoe drops and I gain the weight back? Because it happens. It happens. It would be surprising, right, if it didn't happen. Yeah. And so what happens? Yeah.
I know. I lost 100 pounds prior to having my daughter, who's now 10. Got pregnant, gained almost all of it back, and then some in the pregnancy and postpartum. And it took me like 3 years to get back on the wagon of being consistent with my gymming and my nutrition. And like, that was hard. And I know people, it's hard to think, like, I know people were talking about the fact that, like, she lost all this weight and look, she gained it all back. And like, you hold yourself to a standard, but other people are holding you to a certain standard. And I think that's really stressful. And I know now, with my public kind of presence, that is definitely an external motivator for me to continue to maintain, because I don't want to disappoint anyone or disappoint myself, but also, like, I'm so stubborn, I don't want to not get an A+ in something, right? So like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all the way, and I'm going to do it forever, is kind of how I think about things. So it adds a motivator, but it is also a stressor for sure. And I don't know that I have the answer on how to deal with this. I think I'm in that exact same boat. Because what if I lose my access to my GLP-1 medication and I regain some weight? I will deal with it the best of my ability. I'll be open about it. But to say that I'm not worried about it, or like, see, I know that there are people out there watching specifically to see if that happens, because some people don't have good intentions. But I can't center my effort or my daily activities around what other people think. I have to do things for me in my best interest. So I don't want to regain the weight for my reasons, for me, not necessarily because I don't want other people to judge me for it. But it could happen. I don't know. I mean, if I have a third pregnancy, if I have something happen in my life, like, I'm not too proud to say that, like, there are times in life, in people's seasons of lives, where, you know, nutrition or fitness are not a priority. You know, if my kids, God forbid, my kids go through something and I can't work out for 3 months, or we just had a hurricane, we lose our home and I lose my kitchen, and my whole nutrition plan is thrown out the window for 3 months, and I've got to eat fast food because I don't have a kitchen anymore and we're living in a hotel, and I gain back 20 pounds, so be it, right? Like, weight is not the end all be all. And I think that we could serve other people better if we acknowledge that people are going through things.
You have no idea. Yeah, you have
And we
no
have
idea
no
what's
idea
happening. Yep.
and what their barriers and their struggles are. And I think if we all just assume that everybody has this, like, hunky-dory life where they've got all this time to spend in the gym and go grocery shopping, we are not serving people well. So I think just understanding that everyone, especially as providers, you know, Justin, when you're doing a fitness consult or if I'm doing a nutrition consult, one of my first questions, tell me about your life. What do you do? What's your schedule like? How busy are you? How many kids you got? Who does the cooking? Who does the shopping? What's your budget like? Like, I want to know these details so I can help you actually navigate your barriers.
Yep.
And not figure out, I'm not going to give you some random plan that won't work because you don't get to do groceries except once every month. We've got to figure out how to make that work.
100%.
You've got or you've got time constraints, whatever those barriers might be, we can help you with them. And it's okay. Not everybody has to go through this journey and do everything exactly in the same way.
Yeah, you brought up a good point too. So in our goal setting group for fitness, and I know there's not always 100% carryover, but I tell people that it's important to identify your barriers, and this is very dichotomous to say, like, can I overcome this barrier with effort? It's not saying you are going to just with effort, or is it a real barrier, like what you just mentioned? Like, if your kids are sick, then exercise is not a priority. You need to, and that's fine. You need to have compassion towards yourself and be like, hopefully this shall pass, but this is my number one priority right now. And it doesn't matter how motivated I am for exercise, I should be addressing this first. And you brought up another point too about biology too, and I'm actually rewinding this a little bit, but I always say, you know, your best intentions can never overcome a bad system, or systems are designed exactly to get the results that they get. And one thing that I think that people don't understand about obesity is it's like a 70% genetic component. I can't reference the study, but there was this interesting twin study where they recruited like 20 pairs of twins and they overfed all of them. And the range in weight gain was like 2 kilograms to like 20 kilograms. And the twins basically gained the same exact amount of weight. So you could overfeed two different groups of people by like 2,000 calories, and someone might only gain like 2 pounds in 16 weeks. And I don't think that's where it's difficult when people put some kind of like value on weight, which is strange, because it's like, okay, it's harder for some people, and that's where, you know, people say like, oh, might even be a little ashamed to talk about GLP-1s, which is like, you're helping with the biological stuff right now. That's part of your system. So
one of my favorite conversations to have around that stigma of being on a medication with the GLP-1s is that, you know, I think back to like 10, maybe even 15 years ago. Remember when Tom Cruise got in a lot of trouble talking about antidepressants being like not good, and like there's a lot of shame about antidepressants and mental health care. I think we've come as a society to a point where we say, hey, if a doctor believes that you should be prescribed antidepressants and that's something you want to do, we support you. Here are resources. Like, people have acknowledged that like antidepressants can be good for people, and there's less shame around being on them or needing them in that way. And the cool thing about like antidepressants put people biologically in a place where they're better able to then do behaviors to help address their mental health. Same with the GLP-1 medications. I think the GLP-1 medications put your biology in a situation where now you are better able to follow through with your best intentions.
Yes.
With nutrition and fitness and being adherent to your plan and being consistent and meeting your goals. And it's truly groundbreaking in the way that these medications work. I explain it like I am now able to just stick to my best intentions. I'm a dietitian. I had it all in my head. I knew exactly what I needed to do. But the world would get in the way and somebody would bring cookies and my appetite would say, you're eating all those.
Yes. Shout out to your alter ego on your Instagram. Not your alter ego, your yeah.
I mean, and food noise being gone opens up your brain in a way that now I can actually think through all of these challenges and barriers and mental hangups that I had about my weight history and my internalized fat phobia and my relationship with food. And how do I feel when somebody congratulates me on my weight loss? Now it's like, am I prepared to have that conversation in a way that I wouldn't have had before?
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's a journey for sure, and it's been so fun working with members through that journey with them. And I'm sad that we lost TJ here because he had such an incredible experience. But I appreciate that he's speaking up about that concept, because congratulating weight loss, the takeaway here, I think, should be done very lightly, if at all, and only if you have a good, strong relationship with that person and you know that that person is going to be comfortable sharing, because you could be causing more harm and distress in talking about somebody's weight when your intentions probably are really good, just to say, hey, I see you. I think there are ways to do that in a way to talk about something other than somebody's weight.
I completely agree. I think that's a very valuable kind of like closing statement on here too. But I do have one question for you before we go, which is tangential, not necessarily related to this. I'm curious because a lot of people that I talk to are really, really ready to exercise. Actually, we've had like 20,000 downloads of the fitness plan, and that's actually a little bit, I mean, we might have like a relatively motivated cohort. Maybe that's something to do with it, but I have a hypothesis, and maybe you can talk about your relationship with exercise. But in the past, I'd imagine that a lot of people are like, it's hard to add on a new habit, exercise, when you're expending so much willpower for food decisions. And I imagine that being on, this medication and not having that food noise, you don't feel like your willpower is being sapped so much. And I think a lot of people have the mental energy now to say, I'm ready to add something else. So there's it seems to me that there's a downstream effect on more than one health behavior. I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we see it where people say, and this is my experience too, now that the food noise is gone and I'm not spending every hour of every day thinking about what I'm going to eat, should I eat it, shouldn't I eat it, is it good for me, am I going to gain weight, what's next, what's for dinner tomorrow, like now that chatter is gone, I have more time to be a good wife, I have more mental space to be a good mom, I essentially got a whole brand new career and developed new marketing skills and dove headfirst into this whole telehealth world. I'm so much more productive with my time and more efficient in that way. And so for me, exercise has always been pretty stable. I've always been an exerciser, but it's cool now. Exercise used to be a compensation for my eating. So I knew I was an overeater. So I always had the security of knowing that I was an exerciser, which kind of gave me a little cushion for my overeating. I was like, yeah, you know you overate there, but you're really going to crush it on your lifts later. It's going to pay off that you overate. Don't worry about it, right? It would be like
Yep.
I'd give myself an out for overeating because I knew I was going to exercise later. And now my exercise is more like, oh, you actually enjoy exercising.
Yeah.
I'm doing things that I enjoy.
I think
And
that, yeah.
I used to work out, every single workout I used to have to literally crush myself in. And now it's like, oh, that low intensity 30-minute cycle was awesome. That's enough for today.
Mm-hmm. We should do.
And I'm not stressing about like how many calories did I burn on the bike versus how many calories did I eat today. Like being able to disconnect my food from my fitness has been just also a like lightening of the stress for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say that should be our next conversation is uncoupling exercise as a to say my sole reason for exercising is weight loss or weight loss maintenance. I Yeah, we should have that discussion for uncoupling that. That's the first thing I say in orientation is I say if weight loss is your only motive, then we need to find some more motives. Because there's a mismatch there anyways. Like the exercise is like I don't know what the right the right metaphor would be like I love Robert De Niro movies. What's your favorite movie? Oh, whatever that stupid rabbit cartoon movie he was in. And it's like no, those two things. Like yes, this does he was in that movie. Just like yes, exercise helps with that, but no, there's better movies or there's better reasons to do exercise. So, but anyways, maybe we can unpack that at some point. So
Talk about how terrible all the fitness trackers are compared to the trackers on the machines and the calories and how those don't really mean anything and
yeah,
yeah.
yep.
Break
Well,
up with
we'll
that. Sure.
we'll pick up something new, and then also to everyone that's listening, I'm so sorry for the birds in the background. I'm babysitting two birds right now. I highly recommend never babysitting two birds. So, well, I'll send this to yeah, don't do that. So I'll send this what we got with TJ over, but I think this is a great conversation, and I think that there's a lot of really good information for people, both from people that are losing weight and from people that know people that are losing weight. So, all right, I'm sure you and I will.
Talk to you, Justin.
Yes, I'm sure I'll see you over Slack. Bye, Summer.
Bye.
Bye. And I stopped recording. That was fun.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's too bad he.